Hi everyone, welcome back to Unorthodox Cricket. Now what we're going to do in today's video is we're going to take a look at days 1 and 2 of the first Ashes test between England and Australia. Now obviously we're in a bit of a different setup today. I've just moved house, so apologies that I didn't put a video out on day 1, but what we'll do is we'll cover day 1 and 2 today, so let's crack into it. So after the World Cup, I was absolutely fizzing to get into the Ashes, and day 1 didn't disappoint. Australia won the toss and elected to bat. Now that was sort of a brave decision, but turns out it was a pretty good one in the end. The English bowlers managed to get the ball to nip around quite a bit at the beginning. Jimmy Anderson looked particularly dangerous until after 4 overs he went down, which was a massive blow for England right throughout that first day. Davey Dum-Dum, as we affectionately refer to in New Zealand, didn't manage to get that test match return that he would have been hoping for. He was out LBW, but turns out if he reviewed it, it would have been missing the stick, so that was a massive one for him to miss there. Cameron Bancroft looked okay early on, played the ball nice and straight until Broad eventually nicked him off. So also another guy coming from the sandpaper gate, probably didn't get the return he wanted, but the fall of those two guys meant Stevie Smith came to the wicket, and what a knock he played. He really grinded out early on, really fought through and then dug in with the tail and really turned things around for Australia. So a massive one to lose Jimmy Anderson after 4 overs meant that Moeen Ali had to come in after 20 overs. Now, ideally you don't want your spinner bowling on day 1 of a test match in England after 20 overs. So that was huge. That sort of took a little bit of pressure off Travis Head and Steve Smith. Not saying that Moeen's not a good bowler, but day 1 after 20 overs you really just want to keep attacking with those seamers, especially when they were asking questions, but just due to the injury to Jimmy Anderson meant that the workload was probably a little bit heavy, and Joe Root didn't really have any other options there. Now at about 112 for 5, the Australian captain, the English had set a leg side trap for the pull shot, and he completely fell for it. He played the shot, got caught deep on the fence, and you really just look like a fool. You're meant to be the captain trying to grind your way out, and you fall to something so simple as a basic leg side trap. Not the time you want to be risking that shot. At best, you're probably looking at a single, and worst, yeah, you're out and your team's back in that hole. So not the captain's knock he would have been hoping for, and definitely not one the Aussies will be proud of. So I think he'll look upon that and reflect quite heavily, but yeah, that was poor. And then the dismissal of Pat Cummins when he left one, quite a straight one, 122 for 8. You'd think, oh, here we go, England are going to bowl them all out for easily under 150, but then Peter Siddle comes in, and he really played a chanceless innings of 44, exactly what Steve Smith needed at the other end. Just played the ball when it was there, rotated the strike, and got Steve Smith on strike, which was key to get him through to the big total he finished on. Eventually Siddle fell to a great catch in close by Joss Buttler off Moeen Ali, thick inside edge, that was a great catch. Even then, the English would have thought we can still keep them in check here, and then Nathan Lyon comes out and plays one of his uncanny innings, and Steve Smith tees off. And that really swung day 1 around. England were heavily dominating until they were 8 down, and then Siddle, Lyon and Smith really turned things around. And you'd have to say at the end of day 1, honours were pretty even. Australia made 284 and England were 10 for none overnight. Easily the Australians are going to be the happiest party. They didn't score the biggest score, but to come back from 122 for 8 and drag that all the way up to 284, absolutely massive. And the implications for that, England going into that second innings, knowing that they let the Australians slip away, is absolutely huge. So I dare say at the end of day 1, the Australians would have been the happier team. England would have been heavily disappointed not to capitalise and bowl Australia out for under 150. And yeah, what a knock from Steve Smith. He couldn't have hoped for too much more on test match return. 144, hit the ball so clean. He started off very slow, picked it up throughout his innings, and it was just a classic knock. His classic knocks off the legs, and just his way he manipulates the ball was absolutely phenomenal. And really good to see him back in the test arena and just in playing his best cricket. Stuart Broad was phenomenal at the top, 5 for 86. Just does what he does day in and day out. Initially you don't think he does a lot with the ball, but he really does. Little subtle movements off the deck and things like that. And yeah, he's such a weapon, and Chris Wokes backed him up with 3 for 58. Massive workload for the seamers since Jimmy Anderson was out. I know Ben Stokes struggled a bit, he was a bit expensive. But overall, pretty good bowling performance from England. However, yeah, they just sort of missed that trick when they were 8 down, and having to go to the likes of Moeen Ali and Joe Denley for a few overs probably wasn't in the game plan early on. But yeah, let's hope Jimmy Anderson's alright and can come back and bowl in the second innings. And just one last thing from day one, umpires Joe Wilson and Alan Dar, really interesting day. We had a really good World Cup umpiring decision-wise. There were a couple in the final that went either way. However, this game was particularly poor for Joe Wilson. He got 1 out of his 4 decisions correct, and Alan Dar was complete opposite. He picked up 3 from 4. So, absolute nightmare from Wilson. Yeah, what do you say? I mean, I've always been a horrible umpire. I know it's a tough job, but 1 out of 4 is not great. But luckily there is the DRS in place there, so if he does make an absolute shocker, the batting or bowling team do have that option. So 1 out of 4 is horrible, but the DRS gives you a bit of leeway. But however, I'm sure he'll be looking to up his performance throughout the rest of this test match. So overnight, Australia 284, all out, and England 10 for none. I'd say honours even, so let's have a look at what happened in day 2. So moving into day 2 with honours pretty even, it was a real chance for either team to take the initiative and really push on and take advantage in this game. Now early on, Jason Roy looked horribly out of place at the top of the order. He just really looks like a completely different player to the ODI game, and it's something I've always struggled with as a batsman and as a player to understand why playing the red ball versus white ball is so much more difficult. And it's a hard one. I've always felt with the white ball it does come off the bat a lot easier, it comes off a lot cleaner. It almost feels lighter in your hand, although it's not. And it's almost easier to pick up with your eyes. So whether or not these sort of factors of the viewing of the ball itself, how much comes off the bat, and whether or not the red ball swings a little bit more, maybe they all combined into why Test match is such a difficult game. But it's such a weird one when the balls are designed exactly the same. The only change is the colour supposedly. So it's a really interesting one, and no one's really come to a unique answer on that one. So yeah, but Roy looked horribly out of place. Hopefully he can bring it back. He obviously scored runs against Ireland, but it'll be interesting to see how he progresses moving forward. And the other opener, Rory Burns, I said he looked horrible against Ireland, and he did. He doesn't have a great technique, but we've seen throughout the history of cricket, guys with bad techniques, as long as they know their game and they know their strengths, they can score runs, and Burns did exactly that. He started off very slowly, and he built such a great innings. So Patterson at the top, he asked quite a few questions. I didn't think he'd be in the squad originally, but he definitely justified his place. Yeah, and he really asked big questions of the English batsmen early on. Interesting one, Joe Root was given out caught behind, and he reviewed it straight away. Turns out it came off the stump. I don't know if you guys saw that one, but the bail actually jumped back out of its sockets and sat back in nicely. So really hard one for the umpire there. Obviously it sounds woody, sounds like an edge, and you can't blame him for giving that one out. And then Rory Burns and Joe Root came to the crease and they rebuilt. Started off very slowly and not all that convincingly. A lot of edges through third man and fine leg, and they scored heavily through these areas. You can't really blame Australia. They had the catches in place. They didn't have the third man as protection, which is a good thing because they had that extra man in the catching position. It was just fortunate for England that they kept happening to gap the ball in those areas. And then a bit of magic from Peter Siddle to remove Joe Root. Punched one down the ground, hit it quite nicely, and Siddle just stuck his mitt out and it absolutely stuck there. So that was a great catch and an absolutely massive breakthrough for the Australians. And then both Denley and Butler struggled a little bit. Butler looks good, he played a nice booming cover drive early on, and Denley's very strong through that area himself. But they both made errors in judgment. Joss Butler tried to turn one into the leg side that was a bit straight and ended up getting caught at slip. And Denley was very similar, tried to work one away and he got wrapped on the pad. So they were just 2 errors of judgment from those guys. Probably more one-day shots. They were really trying to look to get on with it, whereas in reality they both should have been playing the ball nice and straight, especially with the ball moving around the way it was. So a couple of errors in judgment there put England a bit more on the back foot. And then Burns and Stokes came together and really played fantastically. Burns was at such a gritty 100. He struggled in the 90s, particularly to Nathan Lyon. Outside off stick, and Lyon was getting a bit of rag there. played and missed a couple of times on 99, but absolutely great to see the young guy get 100. His first test done in the first test of the Ashes, absolutely huge. Came off 200 odd balls, so it was really fighting, but that's exactly what England needed, and they'll be hoping he can kick on in day 3. Stokes came out and he really just showed the form he showed throughout the World Cup. Hits the ball so hard, so cleanly. He fought it out, but when the bad ball was there, he made sure he punished it and put that away. So at the close of play, England are 267 for 4. Burns a magnificent 125 not out, and he's at the crease with Ben Stokes. So at the end of the day, they trail by 17. So England heavily on top. However, the way I saw Nathan Lyon turn the ball, I think they're going to need a heavy lead moving into Australia's second innings. I don't think they're going to be wanting to chase more than 150 on days 4 and 5, purely because I think that pitch is going to keep breaking up and Nathan Lyon is going to be an absolute nightmare. So massive day for England tomorrow. They've got to keep kicking on, try and really push that lead up to 150, 200 and then get stuck back into the Australians. But the benefit of this game is it's so far advanced. England have so much time they can afford to bat a day, day and a half, and then put Australia back into bat. So massive things going forward. Australia need early wickets, simple as that, and England need to put as many on the board as they can because Nathan Lyon is going to be a huge threat come the second innings. As for the umpires in day 2, Alim Dar was 0 from 1, so not great from him. And Joel Wilson didn't really improve on day 1. He was 2 from 4, so he's had an absolute shocker of a test so far. So I really hope he can bring it back because a couple of bad umpiring decisions can really swing the game, especially if teams have used their DRS inefficiently, which in this test we've seen already the Aussies and English haven't used them particularly well. They have on occasions, but no team in world cricket has really sorted that out. They always seem to use it on the gambling ones, and the ones that are a bit close, they seem to be more hesitant. So that's an interesting one. There's got to be a fix there, and I'm sure teams should hopefully fix that in the near future. So day 3 is going to be absolutely massive. The Aussies need to roll them, and then they need Davey Warner and Steve Smith to come out and put some big runs on the board to make an interesting chase for the English come days 4 and 5. Now, thanks for the patience, guys. I really hope the echo in this room isn't too bad. If it is, I'm going to have to look for an alternative option. Thanks for your patience with me not doing a day 1 review until today. Hopefully I'll set this backdrop out soon. But as always, guys, thanks again for watching. Really appreciate your support, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow.